Picking up where we left off, I decided to bring the series back following the whole Jack Eichel controversy following his return to Buffalo. Now obviously in these videos sometimes, depending on the situation, players are despised more after they leave their respective teams than when they were on them. However, it can go either way, right Messier? Okay, with that lame joke out of the way, yes, I'm still rhyming, we're going to go over a select number of players who were hated by their own fan bases. And with that, here are NHL players who were hated by their own fan bases. So just in case there's any new hockey fans watching, or you're just too young to remember, a really messed up situation went down in the Mile High City back in 2004. Following a brutal hit against Marcus Naslund from Steve Moore, Todd Bertuzzi took it upon himself to even the score per se by sucker punching Moore, who was unsuspecting. After Bertuzzi ended Moore's career, lawyers were involved, and as the hockey world was brought to its knees, at the center of the controversy was forward Brad May. Reason being, May insisted that he was to blame for putting the bounty on Steve Moore's head himself, resulting in the traumatic events. Even still, for whatever reason, the GM at the time decided it was a good idea to add the forward to the mix regardless, as he was signed to a 2-year deal in August of 2005. And as you would expect, Colorado fans hadn't forgotten or forgiven May for his actions by the time he joined the team more than a year after the horrific incident. Now, even though the majority of us looking back didn't witness the distaste for Moore firsthand, we're going to turn to a locally produced article from the Denver Post for a little insight on how May was received. Colorado fans booed every time the puck was touched by newly acquired Avs winger Brad May, condemned for posting the bounty that resulted in a brutal 2004 pummeling of Steve Moore at the hands of Vancouver thuggery. And if it wasn't so sad, it might be comical that the player Denver Spectator showed the most hate during a Denver game wore number 10 for the Avs. Well, eventually fans were relieved of their grief, as May was traded in 2007 to Anaheim at the deadline. Now we all know that Toronto can be one of the hardest places to play in, and if you've been watching the series since day one, you'll know that full and well. But for Freddie Andersen, the scrutiny he received over the years was at an ungodly level from the Leafs fanbase. After having a Jennings Trophy caliber season, Andersen took the reins in net immediately after arriving in Leafland. While the netminder was able to handle a regular season workload of 60 or more games with ease, the backlash that Freddie received seemed to be related to his postseason performance. Regardless, one of the moments where the resentment took a very noticeable level was during a regular season contest against Chicago at home. After, unfortunately, letting in a handful of goals on 16 shots, Andersen heard jeers raining down from the crowd following his glove save on Brandon Saad in the second period. Whether it be injuries or the mental strain from the Toronto media and fan base, Andersen began to decline drastically in his final season as a Leaf. After recording a below 900 save percentage after 24 games played, and spending some time with Toronto's AHL affiliate, Andersen was outplayed by Jack Campbell and allowed to walk in free agency. However, most of us watching can all agree that the goaltender bounced back in incredible fashion in Carolina. Even though he's currently battling injuries at the time I'm recording this, Andersen recorded the lowest goals against average of his career with the Canes, and has been in and out of the Vezina conversation. Upon his return to Toronto for the first time since he joined Carolina, Andersen left some room for speculation with his comments while looking back on his legacy as a Leaf. I've dealt with a lot of different things that you don't see. When things are going well, they want to cheer for you. They want you to do well, to play well for the city, Andersen says. I guess different fan bases express that differently. As I mentioned before, the bulk of the distaste from Sabres fans was displayed after Jack Eichel departed for Sin City. But for Sabres fans who kept up with the ongoings involving Eichel, they would be aware of the trade request that the former captain sent up prior to his neck injury even happening. Eichel revealed in an article by Sportsnet that he indeed requested a change of scenery after the shortened 2019-2020 season. Now everyone has their differing opinions on the surgery, the trade, etc., but what we know is Eichel was deemed Buffalo's savior from day one in 2015. After Buffalo self-sabotaged in an attempt to snag Connor McDavid, Eichel was the next best consolation prize. The forward went on to impress for his first 5 seasons as a Sabre, but was sidelined with injury during the 2020-2021 campaign. Eichel wanted a particular surgery that Buffalo wasn't comfortable with, but as many have theorized, that, due to the trade request that was already made prior to the neck problems, burned bridges that couldn't be rebuilt with management. So after Eichel was traded and put out of his misery, I know being a multimillionaire is just so hard, he made his return to Buffalo less than a month after. While some fans embraced the longtime Sabre, others weren't shy about their negative feelings towards Eichel. Even before the tribute video could play, Eichel was booed once his stick touched the puck. Well, after the game, the forward followed the same pattern emotionally and wasn't able to keep his hostility towards the Sabres fan base in check. When asked about the fans' reception, Eichel replied with, "That's the loudest I've heard this place ever," he says. "It only took 7 years for me leaving for them to get this into the game." Therefore, if he wasn't already public enemy number 1 in Buffalo, he most certainly is today following those post-game remarks. Back in the early 90s, to the days of Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky, Petr Nedved was selected second overall by the Vancouver Canucks in 1990. The forward showed great promise, especially after his breakout season during the 1992-93 campaign. After notching 96 points in 84 games played, Nedved upset the Vancouver fanbase after he made the bold move of asking Wayne Gretzky for his stick following the series loss to the LA Kings. With some bitterness already brewing amongst Canucks fans, Nedved didn't help his case, as he made the choice to sit out for the majority of the following season due to a contract dispute. For the minuscule amount of games that remained in the 1993-94 season, Nedved was sent out to St. Louis for a brief amount of time prior to being traded to the Rangers thereafter. As you'll soon learn, that his taste towards Nedved seemed to follow him wherever he went. After he landed in Pittsburgh, despite having a very good season with 45 goals and 99 points throughout the 95-96 campaign, he later resumed his old tactics and decided to sit out for 2 seasons because, again, he wanted more money than the team was willing to give. Unsurprisingly, Nedved was traded this time back to the Big Apple, where he was booed during his second stint with the team. So conclusion, most fan bases that became acquainted with Nedved could pick up on the lack of loyalty he had to a particular team. And due to his greed, really, he was never truly embraced by any city, despite playing for 7 different NHL franchises in total. Selected second overall by the Ottawa Senators in 1992, Alexei Yashin was the first draft pick that the Senators had the pleasure of selecting prior to the team's inaugural campaign. After playing in Russia for a season, Yashin made his way to Canada's capital only to learn that he was no longer the only highly touted prospect that the team had, as Alexander Daig, after being taken first overall in 93, seemed to be the prime focus as far as management was concerned. To prove it, Daig was signed to one of the largest rookie contracts in league history, which was a 5-year, $12.25 million deal. However, for Yashin, despite outplaying his teammate in his Calder-eligible season with 30 goals and 70 points total, it wasn't enough to get a pay raise. Therefore, after management failed to increase his earnings, which were much less, mind you, being a 5-year, $4 million contract, the forward decided to sit out for most of the 95-96 campaign. This, of course, didn't sit well with fans at all, but in an attempt to repair the broken relationship, Yashin declared that he would be donating $1 million to the struggling National Arts Center in Ottawa. However, according to a very detailed article by the Canadian Encyclopedia, those noble efforts from the outside were rather self-serving at further glance. Yashin only made one documented donation of $200,000, which half of the sum was tax-deductible. His parents also would be demanding hypothetically $85,000 per installment, making this ploy a motive for self-gain. After setting a career high of 94 points following the 98-99 season, Yashin sat out yet again due to a contract dispute. One fan even served Yashin a $27.5 million lawsuit during the ordeal. Not long after the new millennium came about, Yashin was old news in Ottawa, as he was traded during the 2001 draft proceedings to the New York Islanders.